So basically, that is like kind of like teaching like emotional intelligence, basically, or how to like deal with mental health. Is
Yeah,
that
it's
it?
basically like talking about bullying, mental illness, those type of things.
Oh, well, I mean, that should probably, off the bat, I would say that should start as early as possible because, I mean, kids are ruthless off the bat. I mean, I wasn't bullied myself, but like I've had like friends who were bullied at like a very young age, like first, second grade. I'm like Jesus, like it's rough, But I'd say it definitely has to be taught. I mean, emotional intelligence can like I mean, here's the thing. Say you can grow up and be physically, I guess the right word is physically mature, but you might not be emotionally mature. I mean, I've seen plenty of, like, adults at my job at Target, saying, like, they'll, like, come through, throw their emotions everywhere, and I'm like, wow, this is literally just a child in an adult's body, So I think it's really, really important, if anything. I mean, if you're not emotionally intelligent or mature, or at the very least, if you're not able to take others people's emotions into consideration or process your own, then it's really hard to kind of build relationships, like meaningful, healthy relationships with another person. I mean, that's where you have problems with, like, romantic relationships with a person who can't, express how they're feeling. That's a problem. And I think that that's just as important as understanding, history or math. It may not have a functional purpose in, like, the economy, but I'd say it's incredibly important to, like, the rest of your life. It's incredibly important to, like, every other aspect of, like, your everyday life. Yeah, that's about it.
I feel like they should be implemented. They should be implemented around high school, I think. And I think they should be implemented around high school because I feel like that's when things start getting a little bit more serious. Everybody's hitting puberty and everything's starting to get a little crazy for people. So, yeah. Middle school, I think, is a little bit too early, but I think that high school is the perfect age.
Okay, I think these are important in schools. I think these should happen in elementary school. Like, I feel like we, like, shelter kids way too much, and, like, we pretend they're, like, little kids, even though this is, like, when they're growing and actually learning. So instead of just letting them see, like, how shitty adults are, like, you teach them these really important lessons at a young age and show them, like, how adults should act, and they can, like, kind of learn those lessons themselves.
So you think they should start, like, as early as elementary school?
Yeah. Yes. Like, Allie was telling me the other day about how I think they talked about, like, 9/11 in elementary school, and I was, like, taken back for a second. And then she was like, no, we just, like, consider their age a little bit, but then, like, keep talking to them about it. And oh, that's sketchy. Like, she was like, it takes you back at first, but then you're like, oh, yeah, they're just, like, little humans.
I would recommend that social and emotional learning begins at birth. In a strange sense, we already do this. We make sure that our babies have naps. We make sure that they're not overstimulated. We make sure to provide them a safe environment. I don't think any age is too early to learn about self-care and to learn about mental health awareness. Children, as they grow, the more awareness they have, the better understanding they may have to cope and develop coping skills with problems that arise throughout their lives. So, really, social emotional learning begins in the home and begins at birth.
I think teaching social and emotional skills in early childhood is a great idea. However, I think it is also difficult. Skills like self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making are, of course, necessary skills to get along in society. Whereas many of these skills seem taught organically from living life, I can see where sometimes they may need to be taught for some in the classroom. The difficulty is in the teaching subjective topics like this objectively. My thought is that it should be worked into the regular curriculum in bits and pieces versus a class on the topic, and taught early so habits have not been formed already that make it difficult to absorb.
I believe that social and emotional learning should not be taught in schools because it requires some serious conversation, and there's no guaranteed age for when someone might be emotionally mature enough to talk about mental and social or emotional learning, and everyone handles emotions differently. And in a school setting, that could be very, I don't want to say dangerous, but it could be very dangerous when you have someone that wants to talk about their feelings. It could lead to bullying. It could lead to items used to deal with their emotions that their classmates are doing, different ways of coping, because it's like social learning theory. You learn from what others do, and that's not necessarily the way that it should be for everyone. And it should be a very individual thing, an individual approach, not really something that should be taught as a mass, because everyone copes with things differently and learns things differently as well. So with this, it's a sensitive topic that deserves to be talked to one-on-one.
I definitely think that social emotional learning should be implemented into schools. I would personally say as early as maybe like 4th grade. That's usually when sexual education talks start happening, and during this time a lot of kids are going through different changes with their bodies and puberty and just emotionally, especially as middle school, junior high, and high school can become really hard for kids. So I think that would be a good thing to implement. Being open and talking about mental health and how school and life has its stressors is something that has been taboo for so long, but so many people struggle with it. And the earlier that we start talking about it with kids makes it normal in society, because it is normal. So teaching kids about different kind of, mental health disorders and how to cope with issues with mental health, and showing kids where to go and make sure that there's good counselors in schools, I think is a really good option to, start reducing that stigma around mental health and also just improving children's overall well-being.
Social emotional learning should be incorporated starting in pre-K. It helps students regulate their emotions, communicate with others, and uses compassion and empathy to understand the needs of other people, build relationships, and make good decisions.
I definitely think social emotional learning courses should be taught in schools, and they should be taught at a young age for those students. So elementary school, anywhere between 1st grade and 5th grade, I think would be a good time to introduce those students to the emotional learning. I think it's important to do that because not every student gets emotional support at home. A lot of them are taught to kind of just ignore their emotions. So it's definitely good to teach students how to address those emotions so that they know how to regulate them around just difficult situations and such.
I think social and emotional learning should not be taught in schools for many different reasons. So one of my first reasons I want to say because of this is that when someone's developing different types of feelings, it could be used, and trying to do it in a group setting could be used against them. Because if you're trying to have a kid at any age level talk about their emotions in a group setting, it's going to be harder for them to talk about it, especially if you already get kids that don't want to talk during class and kids that don't really want to be those kids that participate because they're more like antisocial and they don't always want to be talking in class. Trying to have them talk about their emotional levels in school will be a lot harder. If you want to do something like that, it should be more one-on-one. And if you want have once a year, maybe have a teacher or something, pull each kid apart and basically talk them one-on-one and not do it in a group setting. That'd be better, because doing it in a group setting could just lead to more chaos that could happen, because kids don't always want other people to hear about their feelings, especially if their parents raised them not to talk about their feelings like that. You don't want to push kids to get out of their comfort zone at a young age.
I am Emily Levins. I go to New Trier High School, and I am a junior. I feel that emotional learning lessons should be incorporated in schools. I feel this way because I think that emotional learning could help kids with their mental health and with their emotional health. If they know how to deal with emotions and certain aspects of their life better, this could further help them in their learning. If a child doesn't know how to deal with stress or fear or other emotions, they wouldn't know how to do it would hinder them in their learning, because if a child can't deal with stress, they can't deal with homework, or they can't deal with feeling that they're not enough. If kids get this emotional learning lessons, this could help them later on in life and with like a job or other things. I feel that you should probably start in like 1st or 2nd grade to get a good basis, so then the kids can just keep going and it will just turn into a normal class.